is, what are trees? You know, obviously trees and animals are different from rocks and from sand and from water. They are different. And what makes them different? Animals, we can see, they manifest so many similar characteristics to human beings. And unfortunately, most human beings live like animals, and all they are worried about is sleep, sex, food, and defending their territory or whatever. And that's the animal life. And animals burp, animals yawn, you know, they do all these things that we do. We see so much likeness with them. Why, if they're just there for food, why didn't God put chicken on a tree, you know, like a chicken leg on a tree? They're not there for food. They're their own being, and they have the fear of death, which we can see. They fight for their lives just like people do. Why do they care about their life? Because there's a soul in there as well. Why do they run away for their life like we would? Because they care about they value their own life just like we would. And so there's a life in there. There's a soul in there. And they are God's children as well. So, but what we can understand with reincarnation is that the human life is meant for understanding God, getting closer to God. And if we don't take this opportunity to do this in this human form of life, then I'm going to end up, and I just live like an animal in this life. I make my consciousness like an animal. Then my next body is going to form around the desires that I have. Take this understanding and we apply it to the other living entities that we see here. We know that a tree is different from a rock, different from sand, different from the water, different from the air. Okay, we know that your cat and your dog are different from your house. Your house is not living, and you interact differently with these other living entities. These living entities have a desire for affection just like we do. They have a desire for love. We see other kitten lions curling up with their family, you know. We have that same desire, that same interaction goes on, that playful thing that happens with the kids in human beings happens also in other animals. There's someone in there. It's not just a machine that just reacts to things. It has a mind and it has a body, but it doesn't. The difference between the human life form and animal life form is that you have the chance to understand God. Right? You have a higher responsibility to be kind to other animals. A tiger doesn't have the responsibility to be kind to others because it doesn't have the understanding that goes with it. You have the ability to not cause suffering when you're, unnecessary suffering. You're going to cause a certain amount of suffering just by living, but if you're living your life for God and trying to help other living entities go to God, then you're doing the highest service for them. But if you're here and you're not doing that and you're taking away from animals unnecessarily, then you're hurting other of God's children. And they're suffering the results of their karma. They did some bad things. They lived in such a way that they made their desires just about the eating, sleeping, the sex, the food, and they didn't add God in at all, or any kind of spiritual practice, any understanding of not being your body and being a spiritual being. They didn't have that, so they go and they live over there in that body where, God gives them the opportunity to try and fulfill their desires in that way, but they will eventually come back to the platform of being a human where they get the chance that you have right now. But if you're just going around and doing the same thing where you're like thinking like an animal, well, if lion kills a sheep, I can kill a cow and eat it, and it's not the same. You are different. And we have this idea that we're different, but we're the same in the way that we want to be. We want to be the same in the fact that we want to be able to dominate other animals and eat them and use them for our purposes. But we don't want to be different in the way of being kinder. We say we're different in that I shouldn't kill another human unless I absolutely freaking have to. And in self-defense or whatever, everybody has a different idea of maybe never killing a human or whatever. But we have stricter, definitions of morality with human beings. But we just want to act on this desire to dominate others and to not care. But we have to see that there is a soul in there as well and treat it accordingly. That is karma that we receive as well. God cares about all living entities, all of his children. Some children are, in a body where they don't have the opportunity to understand God. But that doesn't mean that God stops caring about them. It doesn't want their well-being and want them to come back to him eventually. So you, as a human being, you want to try and help all other living entities.